Good morning, comrades! Welcome back to the channel and welcome to, I would say, a surprise bonus episode that is following the talks that I had earlier with the ex-test and development driver of Koenigsegg, Nicolas Vilja, who back in 2017 did the top speed world record run with the Koenigsegg Agera RS. Now, in case you missed those videos, check them out in the video description, but today I am joined by the man himself, Christian von Koenigsegg, and even though not on the couch, but over a video call. Hi Christian, how are you doing?
I'm good, Misha, how are you?
I'm fine too, thank you very much. And more importantly, thank you very much for your time for doing this interview with me. Now, especially for a new audience, I must say that in the last 6 or 7 years, we had this kind of unwritten tradition where I would visit you at Geneva Motor Show in the beginning of the year, where we would talk about your latest cars, about your plans in general, and about all kinds of random stuff. Now, unfortunately, this year, we all know that the world has happened, and unfortunately, I was unable to make appearance because although all these things that have happened, you still, I must praise you for it, you rocked the show, or whatever was left of it. The way you did it was absolutely fantastic.
It was the most expensive video we've ever made. Built up this huge stand in 2 stories, the biggest we've ever had, and we had 2 new car unveils. We really went all in for that show, and like every week, I mean, there was like 3 weeks of building, and we asked the show, like, are you really going to put on this show? Yeah, just keep on going. Are you sure? Yeah, just keep on building. And then like 3 days before the show, no, it's off. Anything else would be like irresponsible. Yeah, like 2 days ago you said it was on. So we had the stand built up almost. So I told the guys, just finish it. I will drive down and we'll do something. I want to see it at least. I mean, it was 90% of the cost was already taken. So when everyone else started tearing down, we were still hammering and painting and building, and they were looking at, what are you guys doing? And I think in the end it was worth it. It's we got something out of it, but for sure the most expensive video we've ever made. But we got to show off the Geneva and the Jesko Absolute, so that was good.
That was great. And speaking of the year, how was it for you personally, and how was it for the company?
Well, I think like everyone else, it's been interesting and challenging. For sure, we've been impacted in the sense of suppliers not being able to deliver fully, people working from home to a large degree. Of course, it's difficult to build cars working from home, so we have also been working in the factory to quite a large degree. And I guess Sweden has also been a little bit famous for looking slightly different at the corona epidemic. And I think in the beginning we got really hard hit in the elderly care, but not so much in society. And I think right now it's pretty much even out around the world. We're pretty much average, but we've been able to keep on going quite efficiently. So we're looking at kind of a record delivery year, not as much as we had planned, but considering the world went under, not too bad.
I am very happy to hear that. Now, as of our topics for today, when I spoke to Nicolas previously, I asked him the following question: what makes a record a record? And I would love to hear your take on it.
Well, that's a very good question. I think as has been clear over the last months of discussion, but also for us during these record sessions, is that it has to be honest, well documented, and comparable. I think those are the main criteria, and then of course a record for a production car. That's what is a production car. Well, in my mind, a production car is something that is series produced under a set of quality rules, and that you're allowed to register the car as a series produced car, for example, with a COC, or in the US you have another type of document, but that you can go to your wherever you get your registration plates with the document of the car, say this is a series produced car, fulfilling the necessary legislation for it to be registered as a series produced car, and you get your number plate. But as record, just speaking about records, I mean, they have to be documented in a clear and trustworthy way. Does it have to be Guinness or FIA or this or that. No, especially I would say since if we take Guinness, they have changed the rules over the years into something that is almost impossible to live up to. Like you have to have 5 of your competitors on a closed off track the same day to compare. I mean, how is that even possible? And I think it's taking the criteria to something outside of the norm in a way. And then if you go to FIA, well, they have their ways of setting up and high costs, and you have to wait maybe a year or so before they can pay you attention and so on. So these kind of self-proclaimed bodies of record keeping, they're great. I mean, they're great in many ways, but they're not the only ones. And I think in the modern society with modern equipment, with outside parties and all the ways you can document with telemetry and video footage and all these things, it kind of these institutions become less and less important as long as you have enough data correlating with other data, correlating with that with video, and that your whatever vehicle or rocket ship or whatever it is what you say it is, and that the record is for a category which is understandable. To me, that will be a record.
So would you say that the way the data is collected and presented is actually more important or already sufficient enough than its verification by a third party?
I mean, if you would have either, I would say, especially maybe even more so FIA than Guinness, if you have FIA there and they scrutinize everything, they bring in all their people and they sign you off, I would say that's definitely clearly a record. But there's other ways of doing it that is more feasible for the real world than getting their attention for everything, maybe, yeah.
All right. Something on a similar note, which you already brought up in your previous answer.
Sorry, I forgot one thing. I think transparency. That you have all this data and you're willing to share the data logs, you're willing to be transparent about what you're doing. So if anyone has any questions, I saw all of this and this and this, but what about this? Yeah, here you go. I mean, it's just, there is no, everything you do with the record should be transparent. So
basically no NDAs and just show and tell things the way they actually are.
It makes it more trustworthy, I would say.
As someone who likes to show the things the way they are, and sometimes maybe a bit too much, I can definitely agree with that. Now, you already brought up the topic of homologation in your previous answer. And once you said that it's not the technology or individual components that make the production of the car very expensive. Could you please elaborate on that?
Well, if we look traditionally on what we have been doing, I mean, we've been selling homologated road cars. We delivered our first one in 2002. We showcased a pre-version of that, the CC8S, at the Paris Motor Show in 2000. Since then we had airbags, we have done crash tests, we've done emission testing. The first versions, the CC8S and the CCR, were European homologations. Then with the CCX, we made a worldwide homologation. We even, when we did the CCX, it was kind of an in-between time of regulation, so we even had to do pedestrian impact testing, which they 1 or 2 years later in Europe said you have to make more than 10,000 cars to have to comply with that difficult test. But that wasn't in play for the CCX, so we even did pedestrian impact testing on the CCX and passed it. Ever since we've been kind of working with all markets, going back to the US again with the Agera RS, and so on with the Regera. And given that we comply cars for the US, for Canada, sometimes even for Taiwan, which is maybe the most difficult country in the world, Asia, Middle East, Europe, it means that even though you have low volume regulation in some of these markets for some aspects, usually it's different for different markets. So in the end, it's basically absolute full homologation like a big car manufacturer for all conceivable tests. And for a small company, that is super difficult and a big burden. So roughly speaking, 70-80% of our development budget is homologation. Crash testing cars, crash testing interior, emission testing, OBD development, it's just massive, and none of these things make the car go faster or make the car lighter. Actually, vice versa, of course. Safety system makes the car heavier, but it's just without that, it is not a production road car. It would be super easy to do something, and it also affects the look of the car. I mean, you have requirements for bumpers, bumper heights, roundness of corners, protruding parts around wheels. So you're also restricted from a look, volume, and in a way aerodynamic perspective. Not that you cannot do a good aerodynamic and still comply, but you have to consider it, which makes it much more difficult and still make the car look good. So yeah, if you can ignore all of these things, it's still a cool car. I mean, maybe you can find a way to register it somewhere. For example, England, usually you kick the tires on anything and you get a license plate kind of thing. but then you should be compared to that set of cars which are not restricted or burdened by these other aspects from a performance perspective. Well, you have also, of course, emission control, noise control. These things are not benefiting the power of the engine. One thing that most people don't even think about is closed crankcase ventilation. When you have a combustion engine with a lot of power, a lot of boost, you also get more blow-by into the crankcase past the piston, especially with high cylinder pressures, unless you have a huge engine. I mean, if you have something like a 5, 6, 7 liter with 1500 horsepower, you have huge cylinder pressure. And on the race engine, you just put a little ventilator and vent it out. But on a certified car, you have to measure the amount and recirculate it back into the intake without getting any oil mixed with it, because that will cause detonation. And this is all controlled by OBD. And that in itself is a huge undertaking, and usually robs you of 200 horsepower or something. So you really have to compare apples and apples, and not doing these things and driving fast anyway is a huge achievement, and should not be taken lightly, and it's applaudable and great engineering and this and that, but it's just a different category of vehicle, I guess. And when you ignore homologation, then you can start looking at, okay, let's go to the salt flats, let's put a rocket engine on it, and let's drive 1,200 kilometers per hour. You suddenly have that freedom when you can ignore homologation. So I think cars that are not fully homologated should more be compared to that category of car, which is a different animal completely. But yeah, anyway.
Comparing apples to apples, I like that. Now, when these records happen, there are two kinds of people, I would say. There are people who, like me, and the majority, is actually cheering for the record. And sometimes there are people who actually say, like, hey, this is just unnecessary marketing. It's just like, yeah, it makes no sense of doing this in the first place. What is your take on it? Or actually, would you say that records sell cars?
Well, I do think it helps. It helps to build a brand. It helps to show off the company's capability. It's a talking point for the customers. It's definitely not unimportant, clearly. However, I would say the way the car actually behaves and drives in the realm which is accessible to the customer, in the end, is more important. It's kind of like a kickstart for a model or a brand or something, but in the end, reality catches up if the car is not exciting to drive or usable or working and this and that. So it's an ingredient that should be used for what it is, and if you can achieve it. And at the same time, driving super fast with a car has some compromise compared to the, let's say, usable realm. Meaning you have longer gear ratios, maybe you have a little bit less downforce because otherwise you have too much downforce at high speed. You can negate those aspects with active systems like we have done, but then you have complexity. You can negate it with 9-speed transmission like we do for the Jesko, and that's kind of what we call the Columbi egg, in a sense that there is no compromise because the 9-speed is lighter than a 7-speed. But you have to fight really hard to make it and not a compromise. So therefore, yeah, I would say you can be fine without it. You can make a great car. You can have a lot of happy customers without it. But if you can break those records with a very usable car that doesn't have too tall gear ratios, which still has a fast enough steering for slower speeds, and short enough gear ratios, and not too much turbo lag and so on, you really proved the breadth of the technology. And I think that is where we always came in, is we want to push the envelope in every direction. We want it to be fun and fast on a small racetrack. We want to be safe and fast in a straight line, but still practical with luggage compartments and detachable roof and a nice stereo and this and that, but still very lightweight. So we're kind of push and also homologated on top of everything. So the ambition of Koenigsegg is always to have the cake and eat it and avoid compromise, try to get everything in without the backside. And that has always made our life super difficult, but that is what I find exciting, to avoid compromise and creating this kind of big envelope for what the car can do.
All right, let's take it a bit further. So suppose you have two cars. On one hand, you have the car that is going to be the first car in the world that is going to break the magical number of 500 kilometers per hour. So it's going to go down the history books as the first car that achieved that. And on the other hand, you have the car number two that is a month later after the first car, will go even faster, and let's say it will maintain this result, so basically be the fastest production car in the world for the following 5 years. Which of the two cars would you rather be?
Well, the round numbers is cooler, I would say. The round number is cooler, yeah. Because in the end, speed is relative, and yeah. No, I think I would go for the 500, yeah. But, you know, there's so many aspects to this that it's difficult to control that will happen. Depending what everyone else is doing, but yeah, I would go for that.
So the race is on.
Well, as we've said with the Jesko Absolute, it will be the fastest car we're ever going to endeavor to make. That it can do 500, not unlikely. That it can do some bit over that, not unlikely either. We have presented all the data on the car, the power curves, the gear ratios, the drag. And the drivetrain losses. So anyone with a calculator and some kind of math skills can calculate the theoretical top speed, as long as it is, of course, stable and the tires are capable enough, and so on. These other more softer aspects, but yes, fundamentally, could it do it or not? And everyone can be their own judge. But the numbers look very, very promising, and as I've said before, I don't think anyone should drive 500. It's very, very scary. It's very, very dangerous. If we find the right venue and we can do it safely, we might have a go at it. And that's it, I guess.
I am very much looking forward to that. But for now, let's step away from the top speed world records and move to the place where I am right now currently, and where my channel is mostly focused on, the Nürburgring. I am sure many of Koenigsegg fans would love to see you here, and even car guys in general. And back in 2016, you were here with Koenigsegg 121, and even more importantly, I would say in 2019, when you introduced the Jesko, you told me that pretty much anyone could do a sub 7-minute lap with that car. So when are we going to see you back at the ring again?
For sure, we want to prove, first of all, the Jesko Absolute, which is kind of the slippery car, it still has a decent amount of downforce and a really amazing chassis. So that will be a great track car in itself. And it will be pretty lively, of course, as it's not pressed as hard into the ground. So it will be very forgiving at the slip point, and a lot of fun. And you can really hoon that thing around the racetrack very fast. The more track-oriented one is, of course, much more glued down to the ground. So that's more of a proper track car, which is a little bit less playful, but extremely fast. We for sure we want to show what it can do. That's clear, and we're very excited by the testing we're doing here locally right now. It's just really blowing our mind. So yeah, it's and we've had a few goes at it, as you know, and we've over the years shown some interesting numbers. I think the most annoying thing was with the 1-to-1 when we went to Spa and got flagged for noise, and the warm-up lap, I think it was the day before, with tires that were like months old, completely worn out. We were just about to change, and not even pushing it at the time became a lap record, but that was way slower than what we planned to go with new tires and really going for it. So even on our previous cars, they are, I think, I would say many of them are still capable of setting almost record-beating laps, but in today's world. But yeah, let's focus on the ESCO on that. So we will see. But that, for sure, it's a clear ambition to show ourselves and the world what they're capable of.
Well, I'll be here and waiting for it to happen. Now let's talk about racing. Back in 2007, you made the CCGT with the intention of competing in Le Mans. In 2018, I believe, when we spoke, I asked you your opinion on the hypercar class, which was back then newly introduced, and you said that you were looking into it. So where are your thoughts today, especially now that we have the LMDH class, which has proven to be a blessing for motorsport fans because Porsche and Audi are coming back, and it seems to be very attractive for manufacturers. So what are your thoughts on racing, and not necessarily regarding competing in Le Mans?
Yeah, I think I'm very excited by it. I always wanted to do it, and we even, as you said, had put in a big effort to go into GT1. And when we were done, it was basically changed 2 months later, so it was impossible. And ever since, it hasn't really been a regulation where you can take our type of road car, modify it into a race car, into any at least interesting racing series, and making the effort worthwhile. It's been GT3s or LMPs and that kind of cars. I know, for example, the Nürburgring 24 hours, you're basically allowed to come with whatever you want, and that is an opportunity. But that's kind of, yeah, one race. So it's a lot of effort for one race, and I know a lot of people do it, but so it's more about, yeah, finding a race series where we can take our road cars and modify them into race cars. That's what I'm interested in. To build like an LMP car or a Formula One car, I'm not so excited by that. I would rather want to show what you can do with our cars slightly modified against similar cars slightly modified. I think it's much more of an interesting situation for spectators and fans, that these brands go up against each other with something you, if you're extremely wealthy, can actually buy. And drive on the normal roads with something very similar. And I see the world is going more and more, and the racing world going more and more in that direction. So hopefully it is possible one day.
I hope so too. Now, on the other hand, you also have the possibility of creating a track-only Koenigsegg, either a derivative of already existing Koenigsegg model or completely standalone model, which will be non-homologated for street use, but a track-only version, and potentially offering like a customer racing series, something that many other manufacturers are already doing. Would that be something that you would look into?
Exactly. We've been joking, like, let's do a Koenigsegg racing series. We will always win. It's fantastic. You will never lose. And that's the point about that. It becomes from a competitive perspective as a car manufacturer. It's more of a commercial exercise than proving the value of your technology. So yeah, we've been thinking about it many times, but we want to compete not against ourselves, but against some strong competitors, I guess.
But I mean, this could be also just an extension of your existing portfolio, something that you would offer to your customers to have fun.
Yeah, I mean, yes, track cars. Yeah, exactly. We have been dabbling a little bit with that, and yeah, we might do that someday. Yeah, just like a track car, not necessarily a race car, even just a open regulation track car. That could be fun.
With the introduction of the Gemera also came introduction of the Freevalve technology, something that many Koenigsegg fans, including myself, have been following since its introduction and ever since you were talking about it, and I'm very excited about it. Now, usually the technology from race cars is making its way to sports cars, but in this case, would you say that Freevalve technology from a hypercar could make its way into racing and prove to be beneficial?
Yeah, yeah, possibly. I mean, what Freevalve is good for is really flexibility. So road car engines are perfect for Freevalve, where you have like cold starts that can be drastically improved. You need a lot of bottom end torque, where we can have valve timing for that. You need a lot of top end power, where you can have valve timing for that. So it adds this layer of complexity, actually making the engine smaller, but it's more complex, and having all these improvements in a wide spectrum. With the race engine, if you take, for example, a Formula One engine, you're usually either flat out or almost full throttle or off, and in a very narrow range of RPM, and no one cares about cold start or bottom end torque. So it's almost like, if you let's simplify it like this: if you have a fixed RPM and a fixed load, you can cut your camshaft perfectly for that and remove your throttle body. But as soon as and the Formula One engine is closer to that than a road car engine, where you want everything. So it can still kind of improve, because you still go through the rev range, and you can improve a little bit over a spectrum, but you get a lot of complexity maybe for a small upside in a situation like that. But it could still be beneficial, but it's really beneficial on these kind of real world scenarios where you again want to have the cake and eat it, where you want everything. Then it can really make a big impact. Fuel consumption, you don't need a throttle body. So you just by throwing away the throttle body, you can reduce fuel consumption by around 4 or 5%, because you don't pull this vacuum in the plenum all the time. Cold start is drastically improved, because basically we can make the engine into a flamethrower to the catalytic converter, so that fires up in a few seconds instead of 20 seconds. So then in the driving cycle, you reduce your emissions by 90%. It's amazing. Because most of the emissions are in the cold start before the catalytic converter is warm. We can have a higher compression, because we can fiddle with the valves, so we dynamically lower the compression when we want to, and then at higher RPM, where you have less risk of detonating, even with boost, we can play with the valves so that you actually use your higher compression, and so on and so on. So it's really when you want a big variation of behaviors, frugality, and low emissions, a lot of bottom end torque, and a lot of top end power, that's where it comes into play.
Speaking of the Gemera, back in 2017, I asked you the question whether you would consider a four-seater hypercar, something that many people find, well, just not make sense in the first place, because four-seaters don't belong in the sports car world, let alone in the hypercar world. And you answered it very positively. And here we are, we have the Gemera. Now, let's take it to a next level. Would you ever consider a Koenigsegg SUV?
Well, I tend to build cars I like myself. So the market survey is easy. I look at myself, what do I want? And then we kind of build that. And I've never been a great fan of SUVs, because I like sporty behavior when I'm driving. Okay, if you have like some autonomous pod or something, it could be an SUV or whatever, when you don't have like lateral movement so much and so on. But the dynamics of an SUV, the aerodynamics of an SUV, unless you're really going off-road, is not so good. I mean, sitting high can be good from a visibility perspective. You can do that in a van as well, with much more practicality and lower center of gravity. And then you usually have these big, heavy wheels and tires that shake the whole car, and it's like an oxymoron. You create something that should behave badly, and then you try to fix it from a sports car perspective. So I've never been enticed by that. But perhaps more like a Paris-Dakar version of the Gemera. That's not an SUV, but like really hardcore Mad Max off-roading kind of thing, with super performance for that you can also drive on the road if you happen to, but you should be out in the dunes with it, kind of thing. that would be more exciting in that case.
I think exciting is an understatement here. Now let's step away from the cars and technology. What do you value the most in your customers?
Well, that's a very good question. Over the years, I would say that they are brave. They are kind of heroes. They come to this small brand and are willing to spend a lot of money with us, and they trust us to create something very unique for them. And of course, when we were much smaller than we are today, that level of let's say, in the beginning, unfounded trust had to be very high until we could prove ourselves. And we have extremely loyal customers. We have a lot of repeat customers, so I think something we did right. But I would call them kind of brave heroes, and also kind of going outside of the realm of the proven, safe, comfy brands. You know, they're usually very tech interested, performance interested. They want something different and unique, and we really strive for them to get that. And as I said, we try to push the envelope in every direction all the time. So they hopefully, when they experience that when they drive it, they feel that if you think about the Regera, it's super comfortable. For the first time, a quite quiet Koenigsegg, but with monstrous performance. And if you take that thing to a track, it can set some crazy lap times as well in one gear. And then you can take off the roof. You have 2 cup holders. You have CarPlay. You have a ride height system goes up and down, fully automatic bodywork, and still it's comparatively light and extremely good in braking, cornering, handling, on the track, on the road. It's avoiding compromise and getting something else. But yeah, but it's going back to the customers. I think many of them have become my friends. I would say almost all of them are extremely nice people. Yeah, we're like a family in a way, I guess.
Last question. Next to Geneva and Jesko Absolute, my absolute Koenigsegg highlight of the year was Time to Reign. This was an absolute masterpiece. Can we, in some time in nearby future, see a similar production from your side?
Maybe, you know, it was a little bit a unique opportunity because it was pretty much lockdown mode, and we couldn't go and do any marketing. My son, he likes to film and edit, and he's helping out here with our promotional material. And he asked, hey, guys, could we do something with our time off here and use the time and take some employees and have some fun? So everyone you see is an employee of Koenigsegg. It's done on a shoestring budget as a way to blow off some energy in the marketing department when nothing else could be done. Who knows? Maybe we will do that again. And it was a lot of fun, you know. It's, yeah, Corona.
Well, yeah, blowing up Volvos. What's not fun about that?
Exactly. That was pretty. I mean, that was absolutely what you saw. There was no CGI. I mean, that was real kind of oil cans of petrol or whatever it was blowing up, and the car was flying over a ramp we built ourselves, and my son and his friends did it. So yeah, it was a fun thing. So
I can imagine. Well, this pretty much concludes it from my side. Again, thank you very much for your time. Thank you for these amazing insights that made me wiser, but also curious to the things that you are going to bring to us petrol heads. I'm very much looking forward to them. I think we have some cool and exciting times ahead of us.
I'm very excited, and we'll see what the future brings. And thank you for today, Misha, and I wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
Thank you very much, Christian. Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year to you, your family, and your team as well. And I'm very much looking forward to our next year's talk. Let's see where that's going to be.
Who knows? Absolutely. Who knows? Well, awesome. Thanks so much. Bye.
Thank you. Bye. Bye. And I guess this also means goodbye to you guys. First of all, I hope you enjoyed this talk that Christian and I had. And in case you missed the previous videos on the topics of Top Speed World Records run, on how it was achieved in 2017, make sure to check out the videos in the video description. And for now, well, thanks for watching. Bye-bye. See you tomorrow for more Nürburgring content and in the following year for more Koenigsegg content. Bye.